Hey everybody, welcome back to another Chess Goals video. Today we're going to look at a game between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura in the Queen's Gambit line, and actually one of the most annoying lines. One of those lines where a white plays bishop to e7, and Magnus comes up with a really exciting approach and how we can play against this and get a big attack like right out of the opening. It's super cool. So let's go ahead and jump in. Before we get started, I want to note that I always have a link to full analysis with additional lines and text commentary that I don't actually cover in the video in the description below, so be sure to check that out. All right, so as the game went, we see this Queen's Gambit position here, and we have this bishop on the e7 square, which is really pretty obnoxious. Normally, when we reach this position, there's a knight on f6, and we're pretty happy with that because we get to play bishop g5, we get to have an annoying pin, and everything's great. But here we don't get to do that, and so we're sort of forced to develop our bishop to f4 rather than to g5 where we would like. We don't necessarily want to try to play something like knight f3, hoping for knight f6, because then we don't get our plan where we get to play knight ge2, f3, and then maybe even a later e4. So this played, and now this comes, and then we bring the queen to c2. The idea of queen to c2 is that we want to stop this bishop from coming to f5. Often, we're trying to play against this bishop, which is sort of doesn't have a lot of great options. And Hikaru tries one of these, and we're going to learn now why this bishop g4 isn't such a great idea. Often when I played the Queen's game, but I've been like really afraid of positions where they're allowed to get this bishop come out, and I'm really trying to get a hold of how to punish it better. And this is a great example. So there's e3 and bishop to h5, and Black's idea is he's just going to trade that bishop off, and then say, "I've gotten rid of my worst piece. How could I possibly be worse?" So bishop d3. And here Magnus just snaps it off. And like, I would never want to play this because I think, oh, I just traded my beautiful bishop for Black's terrible bishop. But it turns out that that's not such a horrible thing. Here, Magnus just castles queenside. And this is already a really scary position for Black because it's not clear at all where he's going to want to castle now. So knight f6 happens, and now f3. Now, a quick note on f3. Usually, when when I learned to play this move f3, I everyone always just said that the main idea is to play e4, and often e4 is the idea that gets played, and that's true here. It does get played in this game, but I want to emphasize that this e4 move, or sorry, f3 move, is really about controlling the e4 square and holding Black's knight back from either of these two squares. Often we do get to play e4, but that's kind of a secondary idea that comes later. So once you've played f3, don't feel like you're now forced to play f4, e4. It's perfectly okay to let this pawn just sit here and play this restriction rule. So knight bd7 comes, we develop our knight, and now b5. You may wonder, like, why not just castles? Why b5? Well, castling is actually really dangerous. So for example, if we castle immediately, then h5 happens like out of the gate, just straight up h5. And if Black just tries to like belligerently do this opposite side pawn storm, it's not really going to work out for him because when we traded this bishop on g6, we actually created a hook, and we're going to have a lot easier time opening up the Black king than Black is our king because we don't have any hook. Our king is setting pretty nice here, and there's not. It's going to take a lot of extra moves for Black to try to open some lines. So, for example, if Black just goes all out, and this is not anywhere near like forced or even best play for Black, but just demonstrating what happens if we try to get into this race. Well, we even have time for a move like king b1, just getting off of the c file, b4, a threat, knight to a4 comes, and say Black he's trying to open some line. I mean, b3 doesn't open up anything. We could just grab it, and this pawn is probably just as safe as it can be. It's defended by the knight, the queen, and the king in that regard. So Black's going to try for c5, but now g4 comes, and already things are looking really, really scary for Black. C5, we just ignore it. We're going to play h5 anyway. You can't play g5 because we're just going to take it. And you get a tempo on my queen, big deal. We'll just go to b3. It might seem natural to go to d2 with the idea that I want to swing over here, but we're actually putting a lot of pressure on d5, and g5 is really hard to stop. And we're also threatening to capture here when the only real way to maintain your material quality is to capture this way. And then our queen is lined up really nicely against the king. So I really like this queen b3 idea. Say g5, just trying to keep things open. I mean, this is the best move. If you try to get greedy and try to win another pawn, then we see exactly why queen b3 is strong. You can play takes, and if takes, well, now g5 happens. The knight's got to move, right? So the knight needs to move, and we grab this pawn with check, and then rook f7 is the only way to block. There's no other options. Now we just get this really flashy move where we sack our knight and grab here, and our threat is really simple to play king h1, and there's nothing that black can do other than dump a ton of material, which even then only staves off mate for a couple moves. So instead, after queen b3, g5 is a better try. It does sacrifice a pawn, but at the very least, it's keeping some lines closed a bit more. We can just grab it and say d3 now, again, trying to win a tempo on the knight and cause white to have to spend an extra move to grab this because we wanted knight d4. And so black is saying you can play knight d4, but you're not going to get to take the pawn at the same time. We play knight d4 anyway. Say rook e8 comes. Now just bishop f4. And say knight f8, just trying to bring pieces to the king side. Well, we can just grab this pawn and we can see that still you haven't really stopped our attack any. We can still play g5, we can still play g6, we can then play h6, and this is going to get blasted open. And where is black's counterplay coming from exactly? They have no threats on the c file. There's no chance that they're going to open up either the a or the b file. We can always meet b3 with a3 if we have to. There's just not really any problems here for us. We have a massive attack. So this is why castling out of the gate is so dangerous. So if we go back, after we play this knight ge2, Nakamura played b5 immediately. And Magnus responded in a fantastic way. He does play e4 straight out of the gate. And the point is that he didn't castle. The king is still stuck in the middle. So if the king's stuck in the middle, well, let's open things up in the middle. But this creates chances for both sides, though. I mean, with the center cracking open, when black does eventually castle kingside, there's more fluidity happening here, and more things can happen to the center of the board. So b4, we move the knight out of the way, and captures, and now queen to a5, which looks like an active move. It touches the knight, makes sure that this queen is a little bit stuck. Maybe this is a threat. Doesn't matter. We just play king to b1. And if you try to do something like take here, well, this is just way, 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 way too dangerous. You can grab this guy, but we're just going to take here. And after the rook comes to the middle, you already can't castle because you just dropped the bishop. We're going to move the knight out of the way, and this bishop is probably going to fall. There's really not anything better to do than just to give it up. I mean, you could try to bring your queen back, but now just bishop d6, and this is a goner. So you can't. That's not a real threat. And so that's why we can get away with this king b1. But now black chooses to castle. And this is a little bit different than castling before e4 was played. Because now the center is open, and it does give black some chances for some greater attacking, but it doesn't really matter. We're still going to go h4. He brings the rook into the middle of the board, again targeting this e4 pawn. Maybe we're going to drop the bishop back. Maybe we're going to put the knight here, just trying to free up some squares. Maybe we need to run with our king at some point. But now e5, kicking that knight away and asking it where it wants to go. The most not logical, but the move you would like to play in a position like this is to play knight h5 to prevent this pawn from moving. But that doesn't prevent anything. Just g4, fine, you can have my bishop, I don't care. I'll just take back with a knight. And when he's trying to bring this knight in to defend the h7 square, which is sorely going to need defense here soon, we play a really instructive move, just g5. The idea of g5 is that we want to play h5, and we do not want black to be able to play g5. This is super cool idea. And then, say after queen c7, now we can just play h5. And sure, you can take this guy, but we don't really care. We're getting lines open. If anything, you've helped us because now we have the g file for the rook. So going back, he chose to play knight to d5, which is kind of an inaccuracy. I mean, it seems logical, though. I mean, knight to g4 is actually the best move, but this move looks really scary because the knight's not defended by anything, and it's not clear how it's going to get defended by anything, and it has no real squares to go to at this point. So I can understand not wanting to play knight g4 because it just seems like this knight's going to get trapped. So knight to d5 was played, which seems like a much safer square. It's centralized. Everything's great. daring us to take this pawn so that we can get a rook in with tempo. We're not interested. H5, and now G5. And here, this is a somewhat of a different story because G5 does happen, but now that we have this pawn on E5, this is going to give us another break, an opportunity to crack open the center if you do go past this here. So H6 is played. This is a really nice idea. You can't take this. You just can't. This is just too much. The queen is getting in. The rook is getting in. This is a lights out type situation. This pawn on E5 is doing a fantastic job making sure that a knight can't come to this square. Now we have this pawn on G7 making sure a knight can't come to F8. This H7 square is just going to crumble. So G6, trying to keep things closed. And here Magnus actually messes an opportunity. He can play E6 now. And the point is, when you grab this guy, we can grab here. And when the rook moves, now we really can take this pawn. Because there's no rook to C8 coming because of this guy. And this guy's sitting here. It's not clear that white's ever going to be able to win that pawn back. And, nothing has changed over on this side of the board. We still have serious attacking chances. Really, really serious. Anyway, this was a nice miss. Instead, he went back to C1, which is a logical move. Just getting the bishop completely out of the way, keeping these lines open, keeping the squares open so that we can try to get our pieces in. The knight comes to the king side, and he drops the knight into C5. Takes and takes. And of course, we want to take with the pawn here. We want to take with the pawn so that we can keep our queens on the board because we're attacking. Another key idea with E6 is that it can never be captured even after this knight is gone because this G6 square is terribly problematic. So takes, and now B3. And we can grab this. It does give the C5 pawn back, but we don't really care. We're going to go knight D4. And again, it seems like maybe you could grab this pawn, but that's not really going to work so great. We go knight to F3, and that we hit this. And now say rook E2, which is how the game went. We have knight to G5, and it looks like black is going to get some activity here because there's, maybe queen to C2 is going to come at some point, but it just never is. So he drops the queen back trying to defend, and now a really, really nice move, queen to D3. I like this a lot. The point being that like F6 and F5 are a lot less appealing than they used to be because we're touching this G6 pawn. So Naka plays rook to F8, and we just bring the rook to the F file, and we're just going to grab here. We're not afraid of F5, which is what was played in the game, because G4 comes and everything gets cracked open. Look how beautifully safe the king side, the king side is for white. I guess it's the queen side. I got confused there. It's the king on the queen side. There's just really no issues here. There's not a threat to be had. So F5, and we just smash open with G4. The position is just crumbling apart now. The eval bar is going absolutely nuts over there. Knight to A4, just hoping for something. But now just queen to D4. And, this is a threat, which means that this guy is stuck here forever. Queen to E5 is a nice try. But now we actually can just take the queen. Our attack is so strong. We've got this pawn that's creating all kinds of havoc. We don't even care. We don't even need the queen anymore. Takes. We open this guy. Takes. And now just knight to F3, dropping out of the way. Kicking this rook across. Maybe we're going to bring one of our rooks to the G file. Rook D7 comes. Now rook G1. The king tries to hide behind the pawn. Tries to use this guy as a shield or an umbrella, but it doesn't work. Rook to G7 comes. And after king to H8, resigns. This is we double the rooks. We're threatening to come this way, which would be a checkmate. Rook to F8 happens, and knight H4, and he takes. And here Naka resigned because it's over. We have a couple options. We can take with the pawn. We can take here, but the point is that after we play something simple like rook takes G7, this is unstoppable. The only way you can even hope to try it is to play here. But then I just come. You're forced to take. We're up in exchange. We still have a pawn. This is an incredible position for us. Absolutely winning. So this is a really stunning game from Magnus and really cool and demonstrates why it's not always the end of the world if white gets their bishop out and even manages to trade off this bad bishop from the Queen's Gambit declined. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed this and that we'll see you around. There's always there'll be a link to a playlist with more learns from the Queen's Gambit decline. And as always, Don't forget to subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Leave us a comment. I love to hear from you guys. It really encourages me to keep making these videos. All right. Bye bye.